Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a topic today. Well, it's something that really hit home for me reading through your submissions.
Yeah.
It's about depression.
Mm-hmm.
And we received a really thoughtful message from a listener
Okay.
who, well, they were asking some pretty big questions, honestly, about depression, like what it actually is.
Right.
And maybe even more importantly, can it ever really be cured,
Yeah.
And one thing that really struck me, the listener mentioned that it's like all mental.
Okay.
And they even connected that to like willpower, which I thought was, I don't know, it's just such an interesting way to frame it. So I'd love to kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a common way to think about it, and it
Yeah.
makes sense in a way, right? I mean, our thoughts, our feelings, all that stuff, it all comes from the brain.
Yeah.
But I think when we start to think about depression as just this mental hurdle that you can overcome with enough willpower.
Just like snap your fingers, you're good.
Exactly. It's like, just cheer up. Yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of miss the complexity of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying, like, a car only needs gas to run.
Right. Ignoring like the engine, the transmission.
All the other stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Depression, it's multifaceted, and it often involves this really complex interplay of things like your biology, your genetics,
Yeah.
your brain chemistry, but also your environment, your life experiences, your social circumstances. It all plays a role.
It's not just one thing, right?
Exactly.
It's like this whole like web of different factors.
Yeah. So you mentioned biological factors. Like what's actually going on in the brain when someone's experiencing depression?
So think of your brain chemistry kind of like a delicate ecosystem.
Okay.
Everything's got to be in balance. And sometimes that balance can get disrupted. Maybe it's genetics, maybe it's some major life event.
Yeah.
But essentially, those communication pathways in the brain, they're not firing the way that they should.
Wow. So it's literally like a physical change.
Like, exactly.
It's not just like, ooh, think happy thought. It's like your brain itself is being impacted.
Yeah.
That's really helpful to understand.
Yeah, it's not just about positive thinking. So going back to that question of can it be cured?
Yeah.
It's not always about finding a cure in like the traditional sense.
Like you take a pill and it's gone. It's more about understanding those root causes and finding ways to manage and alleviate the symptoms. And that's where professional help can be so crucial.
Because you wouldn't try and fix a car on your own if you don't know anything about cars.
Exactly. You take your car to the mechanic, you talk to a therapist, a counselor. They can give you the tools and support to work through those underlying causes.
Absolutely. And one thing, I think it was in the same message actually that the listener mentioned, was this feeling of being stuck in the past, which really resonated with me, especially in the context of depression and how it can make it hard to kind of move forward.
Absolutely. And that's a very common experience with depression. In psychology, we call this rumination.
Rumination.
Rumination. It's basically this pattern of dwelling on past mistakes, regrets, what ifs.
Like constantly replaying things in your head.
Yeah, just stuck in that loop of negativity. And it's a very common symptom of depression.
Rumination.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that. It sounds exactly like what it feels like,
Yeah.
like heavy and stuck. So, I mean, we've covered so much ground here. What would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that depression is not a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's complex. Like we said, it's multifaceted. And it's a call for understanding, both for ourselves and for the people in our lives who might be struggling with it.
That's such an important message. And listener, if you're out there and you were the one who wrote in, thank you. Thank you for your honesty and for trusting us with this topic. And for everyone listening, think about this. If you could go back and talk to your past self, maybe at a time when you were feeling really down, what would you want to say? What kind of support do you think you needed? Knowing what you know now, just something to think about. Until next time.